Welcome to the Love That Guy podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Ronnie Gene Blevins.
And this is Brendan Reynolds.
He got third all for billing at the end of each picture. That don't really mean much, he would say with a grin. But he held my hand tight when he poured his name out. Only 4 or 5 names down below Errol Flynn.
We are the show that celebrates the journeyman actors, the actors we all know and love, and even though we might not always know their names, we inevitably see them in film and television and think to ourselves, love that guy.
Ronnie, that was a good one we got today here with Earl.
Yeah, man. W. Earl Brown. That was incredible, man. Incredible. You know, I was thinking, I actually got this from another podcast, so I'm kind of stealing this, but I was thinking why I feel so good during these podcasts, and I was hearing this other podcaster say, he said something similar, and he goes, well, his guest said, well, you know, everything else strips away when you're doing it. You know, you're not thinking about what you got to do in an hour or tomorrow or the past. You're just kind of forced by nature of the format and what you're trying to do to be completely in the moment. And so I always feel like that here with you guys, and I appreciate it, man. And yeah, Earl was amazing, dude. Just so many there's things that I didn't bring up with him. You know, I wanted to bring up like draft day and there's just literally too many to mention. But
an hour, he's had a long career. There's some funny anecdotes in this one. It's gonna be a good time for the listeners.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, he really is something, isn't he? Anyway, guys, we have W. Earl Brown coming, and he's really cool, and he was really sharing. He was really good at sharing, just kind of like experience and maybe a little process and some stories. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Poet. He's kind of remind me of Bauer. He's got a real strong philosophical point of view on the whole thing. So that was
man. Yeah. So enjoy, guys, and if you're listening to this on a whatever format where you can leave a comment, that'd be great, or like it, or go over to YouTube and check that out as well. But thanks, guys. Dig in, enjoy. If ZZ Top's LaGrange was an actor, it would be our next guest. While I might not know exactly what that means, I do know that LaGrange is one of my all-time favorite songs. Our next guest embodies a unique vibe, one that can only be created by a man born in Golden Pond, Kentucky, bringing the essence of Western Kentucky to showbiz. After graduating from DePaul in 1989, he started performing at the esteemed Steppenwolf Theatre. He stole our hearts as Warren, and There's Something About Mary, and he made us want to drink bourbon and smoke opium in Deadwood. He could have stopped there, but instead he went on to be the quintessential guy we love and countless other film and TV shows. Welcome to the show, the incomparable W. Earl Brown. How you doing, buddy?
Awesome. I'm doing good. And it's funny you say LaGrange, because right behind the camera, right there, is a poster of Dusty and Billy from Taking Texas to the People.
Wow. That's it's so funny. I wrote that, and then I'm talking to Johnny Dowers last night, and I was like, hey, man, tell me some good anecdotes about Earl, you know? But I want to get to that. I want to go very sequentially here. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good.
Good. Okay. So let's start off because, you know, we had Chris Bauer and who I know you know well, and Pat Healy on the show, who they always speak about the magic of Steppenwolf, right? But they kind of speak about it as this place they arrived to and it was magical. But since you predated them, I'm guessing you're a part of the core group of people that kind of created this place.
No, I was never part of the company. It's just the break. My connection with them. Tom. Last name's escaping me at the moment. He taught. He was part of the company. He taught my third year of theater school. I went to DePaul, to theater school of DePaul. Was the Goodman School of Drama when I auditioned, and then they changed the name. But I was there with John Riley, John C. Gillian Anderson. There's a few other folks that are still at it. So with Steppenwolf, they had an outreach program that was funded by government. It was for high school kids. And they did A View from the Bridge.
Right.
And they had just moved into that new space. They had moved from the old dairy into the big, nice theater. So it was one of a handful of really nice theaters in the company. And B.J. Jones, who now runs the Northlight Theater, he was directing that outreach. Well, I got cast as Eddie, you know, the lead in the show.
Yeah.
And it was that, and we, on dark nights, we ran for a public audience. Well, word spread about how good the show was, because it truly was. It still remains one of the greatest things I've ever been a part of. It was magic.
Wow.
And Amy Peets was in it, who also went to theater school. And for both of us, it broke our careers open in Chicago, because suddenly everybody in Chicago theater was like, oh my God, you've got to see this Steppenwolf. So that was, excuse me, I left then a year later, because I was always set on movie and TV.
Right.
And because I knew that's how I could make a living. And within a year or so of that View from the Bridge, I'd kind of hit the glass ceiling in Chicago. And I know Pat, I listened to the broadcast, to the podcast. I don't really know Pat. I think I've met him in passing, but I know Chris, know him pretty well. And I think they started with Clockwork Orange, which happened right after, I think it was 94. I left in February of 93. I landed out here.
Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to do more stuff with them, and was kind of at the place, because after View from the Bridge, I stayed busy, one play right after the other in companies around Chicago. Okay. So yeah, I was never a part of the company. And then I got to know Jeff Perry really well out here, because Jeff did found the company. He and Terry Kenny and Gary Sinise.
Right.
Right. He used to have a Chekhov group out here. We would get together. He taught it. And I never understood Chekhov until I had that class. Even though having done Chekhov in school, I never got it until I had Jeff.
You know, I know how much music means to you. You know, and my first creative heroes were musicians. You know, and I'm wondering what, like, when I since kind of my first creative heroes were musicians, and my first introduction to art was music. I kind of, when I'm looking at roles, I find the musicality, the rhythm of it. I'm always like kind of looking for the music of it, you know. Mm-hmm. And you know, but when I first came to LA, you know, being from Texas, you know, I was looking, you go out there and you move, and you're looking for people that kind of validate your experience of where you come from. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I've always looked up to for that reason, you know, because you kind of, you know, you were kind of a Southern boy, you know, Kentucky boy who brought your essence with you, and you were bold enough to do that, you know? So I always respected you for that, you know?
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I digress. So, but you get backdraft in Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. So was it a project that brought you out to LA? You're like, no, I just got to go.
Backdraft was the first time that I had a camera job. And the way that happened is, I worked on the renovation crew for the Blackstone Theater. The theater school of DePaul had bought the space, and I was one of the 3 student workers. I mean, I was in the guts of that place, in the sub basement, you know, pulling out crap, sweeping the floors. And the contractors that were on a job were always busting my balls. Hey, actor boy, get your broom, you know. And my uncle actually had lived up there when I was young, so we would visit Chicago. So I started mocking the guys, the contractors. When they would be giving me shit, I'd start talking like them, you know. So Backdraft comes around. There was a role at the beginning of the film that Ron wasn't sure if he was going to make it. He's the bartender when Billy Baldwin comes back to the old neighborhood. He was going to make the bartender either somebody Billy's age that he'd grown up with, or someone who had been Billy's dad's age, his deceased dad. So at that point, I guess I was kind of the young guy. So I was brought back to meet with Ron. We're at the the big hotel downtown Chicago, named escapes me, but I could hear the auditions. No, it's an old school one.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm sitting there, and I could hear the other actors in the room while I'm waiting. And I hear Ron say, there's a very distinct Chicago dialect. and we're looking for that flavor. So from the time I walk in the door, I put on like I'm a plumber, from Chicago Heights or something.
Wow.
So we start doing the thing, and we do it. And Ron says, "Well, obviously you're from here." And I said, "Well, actually, no, I'm not." He goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Kentucky." "You're from Kentucky?" Yeah. So he ended up hiring another actor, an older guy, to play the role. But I got a call. "Can you teach other actors how to do that?" "Do what?" "That dialect you were." "Yeah, I can."
Wow.
So I got hired as the dialect coach. And then I knew they were big basketball nuts.
Right.
And they were trying to find a gym where to play. Well, I had a weekly game at DePaul, and I knew the athletic director at DePaul. So I call up Mike Lenthy's office. I said, "Hey, man, could we on Sunday?" So they had to hire a student worker. So every Sunday morning was backdraft basketball day, where we'd play back pickup games. Well, I got to know him on the court. I'm like, "I need my SAG card. If I hit this jumper, you've got to give me a line." Well, they did.
Wow, buddy. Okay. Yeah.
So that's how I got in. Well, then one thing led to the other. I got bigger parts.
Yeah.
And then I was doing 2 years later a movie called Excessive Force for New Line. Everything its title implies it being. They were they were trying to launch Thomas Ian Griffith as a Seagal Van Damme, but that kind of movie was kind of past its prime.
Right.
They're about 5 years late for that kind of a thing. Well,
imagine that Hollywood chasing trends, right?
Yeah. So they paid me. They wanted oh God, brain fart. You got me early this morning. I haven't had enough coffee. But the actor they wanted, they couldn't afford out of LA. So they hired me locally for Scale Plus 10. And I'm a supporting lead. It's like Burt Young is the bad guy and I'm the renegade son. And I knew as I was doing it, like, all right, this is as good as it gets. This is crumbs off the table. I've reached the glass ceiling here. So I got the baseball movie, The Babe, right after that, which I had 3 lines, but I was on the entire movie.
Yep.
So it was after that I'm like, all right, I need to go try Hollywood. So February 2nd of 1993, I drove into the city limits.
And you have and you got a SAG card in your wallet, and you probably know a few people. Did you have a relatively easy go of it? I'm wondering what it was like those next couple of years, because I know we're gearing up to 98 when you get when Something About Mary comes out, but
yeah.
How were those few years?
Well, when I first came, I had been here 2 weeks and I got a pilot. It was called Crescent City. It was a cop show set in New Orleans, and it was for Fox, and I was the bad guy. Well, it was a recurring guest star, but they told me, look, if we get picked up, I think we're going to make this a regular,
Yeah.
Well, I go and I shoot the pilot in New Orleans, and it's the first time I had been flown, when the car picks you up and you got a first class ticket. So I shot that in New Orleans, and I got back here. I was renting a room. There was an agent at the agency I was at. She would rent out rooms in her house, and I was renting one. So I get back here, and I got a TV movie with Stephen Lang. I got like 4 scenes in it.
Wow.
Thankless role, but I got 4 scenes. So I called my wife and I went, we got to move out here because this is fucking easy. This is low-hanging fruit, man. So the pilot, the pilot did not get picked up. The movie came and went, and again, thankless role for me. And suddenly I'm no longer the Chicago theater guy. I'm just another schlub, So it was starting all over again. And it was 7 months of nothing. And that was spooky because I'd gone from, the last year and a half in Chicago, I stayed pretty busy.
Yeah.
It was commercial auditions and shit like that creatively,
sure,
who gives a shit, but you got to have money in the bank. So I get out here and then it's back to square one.
Right.
But it was Gary Zuckerbrod was the casting director on the TV pilot. Gary remembered me and loved me in the pilot. And then Gary brought me in on 2 projects he was working on that fall. And but you appreciate this story. The first one, The script was 180 pages long. I saved it because I'd never read anything like it. I had not seen the director's first movie. And so Gary wants to see you. So I'm reading it in bed. My wife wakes up the next morning. She goes, "What are you auditioning for today?" I went, I don't know how to describe this. It's a crime movie. She goes, "What's the role you're playing?" I went, "I don't think you want to know." And the room was tiny. There was a couch, and Quentin Tarantino and Lawrence Bender were sitting 3 feet away from me, and I was doing the get the gimp spider.
Right.
It was, it was down between me and Dwayne Whitaker, from Texas, for that role.
Yeah.
And so Dwayne got that one, and then Gary was doing Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and it was a one scene part, but it was a decent role.
Yeah.
And Wes took a shine to me, and he took me under wing, and so that was really kind of the salve here, because this is the first Hollywood known person, that really took an interest in me.
Right.
And I got to know him personally, and I ended up doing 3 movies with Wes.
So that's a bit of a turning point for you in LA. Just that first kind of bit of, okay, this is going to get some momentum, right?
Yep.
When you look back and reflect, right?
Well, it was that vote of confidence,
Right.
No matter how good you are, no matter what your experience, there always comes that voice, especially when you're relying on, trying to make a living at this.
Right.
Right. And my wife was still working at that time, full time. So, we had that.
Right.
And then the only smart financial decision I ever made in my life was, I bought this house in 1995 because I got some big fat residual checks. Like, what? I think I could buy a house. So, I mean, it was my down payment. It wasn't buying my house.
Right. Of course.
The real estate market was at the rock fucking bottom. So I bought this house I still live in.
Wow.
Which is worth now 8 times what I paid for it.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's amazing. That's so cool, buddy. It's when you look at a role like Warren and Something About Mary, which I know you've been asked about a million times. And it's just so extraordinary. But I imagine something like that, with a role like that, being just a total game changer. But I also imagine a world where it's like, when the industry sees it and they're like, well, who the fuck is that guy? And then they meet you, it's something that maybe confuses them because it's so different, right?
But you would think, as I would have thought before that movie did nothing for my career.
Interesting.
Nothing. Because people thought I actually was that character.
Interesting.
The Pete and Bob were adamant that the audience has to believe the character. And I knew, it took me forever to get in the door because they were seeing stand-up comics. And I was part of an improv group with Amy Peets. We would meet at Amy's house. And her husband at the time was part of Paul Sills's company in Door County. Every summer they'd go up there for 2 weeks and do improv in Paul's barn. Paul Sills is Viola Spolin's son.
Right.
Well, they would host at their house on Sunday. It was all working actors. And we would get together and just play games and put together scenes. We weren't planning on forming a company or doing a show. It was just to kind of exercise those muscles.
Right.
And Rob Moran was part of this. The way Mary happened, this is one of those kismet things, that we rarely cross in our careers. But I was doing, it was a mini series for CBS called Bella Mafia.
Okay.
And Jennifer Tilly and I were husband and wife, and it was really kind of overwritten melodrama, and we kind of played our stuff tongue in cheek, with a bit of humor. And there was this camera assistant, Gary Yoshiba, who had shot 2 of the Wes Craven movies at that point that I'd worked on, and I knew him. And we finished this scene one day, and Gary goes, "Oh my God, you're funny. I mean, you're funny. I'm going to be doing this new Farrelly Brothers movie. It's called There's Something About Mary. Dude, it's the funniest script I've ever read in my life. You ought to." The next day, I'm on Stairmaster at the Bally's Health Club in Studio City, and Lynn Shay is next to me. And I do the double take. Go, "Hey, you're Lynn Shay, right?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, we have a mutual friend, Wes Craven." "Oh my God, I love Wes." Well, actors talking about what they're doing. And She said, well, I'm going to start this new Farrelly Brothers movie. It's called There's Something About Mary. It's the funniest script I've ever read in my life. So 2 people in the course of 2 days.
Yeah.
So I called my manager. I'd been with her for a year at that point. And she got me the material. She has Viggo Mortensen, still has Viggo. And because I was with a tiny, small agency, she was able to get me the material through Viggo's agent at, I think, CA, one of the big ones. I'm reading it, and it's just, oh my God, that, because there's very little on the page of Warren.
Okay.
So they can't get me an audition. My agents can't. Well, that Sunday, I rewatched the Farrelly Brothers movies. And so Sunday, I get back to the improv group, and Rob Moreno, dude, I finally know where I know you. I kept thinking Chicago, because all of us are Chicago. Dude, you're Stanley, the evil bowler in Kingpin. And he goes, yeah. And I go, you're the bartender in Dumb and Dumber. I said, you know the Farrellys? Because I grew up with them in Rhode Island. Oh, wait, you did? Because, dude, I am trying my damnedest. Before I even finish the sentence, Rob says, something about Mary Warren? I said, yeah. He goes, dude, they can't find anybody. They've seen dozens of people. Rob put the call in. He called me that night. He goes, they're going to see you Tuesday.
Nice.
And so I'm the only person to play it straight, because I just knew instinctively, if you goof on this, because they were seeing stand-ups who were trying to make it funny.
Right. Right.
And I knew, if you goof on this, if you Joe Dirt it, this farcical portrayal, it's not going to be funny. An audience is going to hate you. You can't punch down. So,
no, right.
That's the way it happened.
And by the way, the beautiful thing about that, oh shit, I'm sorry, Brendan, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
The beautiful thing about that is what makes Warren funny. It's really all the stuff like it's not about that. You know what I mean? And really the number one thing we reflect upon is the love between you and your sister. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it's about. That's fascinating, man. That's fascinating. So when you read this script the first time, you're like, oh, well, I just got to find which role it's going to be, right? And then after you get the audition, do you already have this guy in the back pocket, or then you get to work?
No, I went in the first time, and again, and it was dudes I recognized from Comedy Central. It was comics, and I could hear people in the room, and I'm like, that's just not. So when I went in, and it was like 8 or 9 people, it was a room full. I played it straight. And then I left, and I got a call the next day. They want to see you again. So the only thing I changed, I was out shopping with my wife, and there was this family, these 3 women, mom and 2 sisters. And the sister, obviously she was on the spectrum. She was sitting next to me and waiting. And I noticed how she turned her head when she, it was, and I thought, oh, I'd never thought. So that's the only conscious thing that I took with me. So I go back the second time, and there were 4 people. The first 3 guys read, and I could hear it. I could hear them trying to yuck it up. So I went in, and it was just with Pete and Bob. And we read it, and I knew it wasn't. I know when I'm on target, I can just, there's an internal fulcrum that I reach where I know I'm perfectly dialed in. I know it. And in that, I wasn't quite what I was the first time. So we do it. And I said, okay, that's great. Can we do that one more time? And Bob goes, there's no need to do it one more time. We're going to hire you. That's the only time that's ever happened in the room.
Wow.
And I said, what? He goes, yeah, we've already talked about it. You're the guy. So we don't need to see it again.
Wow.
So, you're just trying to maintain your cool in the room. Well, great. And I remember walking over and go, see you guys in Miami.
Wow.
So then I got in the elevator and was totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you get to see.
It was just an instinctual thing when I read it on the page. I don't really think I was reading it just because everyone said how absolutely hilarious it was.
Yeah.
And it was. So.
Yeah.
But career-wise, man, when it took off, I always thought naively at the beginning of things, because I'd hear about all these contract negotiations and trailer sizes and all of that, which you think is completely periphery bullshit.
Right.
And it is. But I thought if they do special work and it does well, then nice things happen.
Right.
And like when I did Scream with Wes, I had no idea what billing meant. You know, my name and pictures at billing and it was not negotiated.
Right.
It's just Wes put me in there. And I was, oh, that's really nice. Oh man. Well, I didn't know. I mean, you've been in it, you know, anyone listening to this, they accept you at the level you're at, you know?
Yes.
And those are the jobs they will offer you. Oh, he's front of movie billing. Oh, so that means you don't get offered the day player things generally, you know? It's
right.
So I go into Mary. I had billing, of course, but the movie takes off, and I'm like, all right, man. Oh, my bags are packed for the gravy train. Well, I'm standing in the station, and the gravy train blew right by me.
Wow. But critically, you're getting I understand that. You got to be getting some sort of validation critically, or not necessarily. Or was that a slow kind of like register for people?
It was. Now, there's a great Ray Wiley Hubbard lyric from Mother's Blues. Every day that my gratitude is higher than my expectation, I have a good day. And I remind myself of that on almost a constant daily. And especially when it comes to something about Mary, because the movie explodes. It's huge. I didn't get invited to a single fucking party. None of the award shows or anything. I was not invited. I don't know why. So that was it really hurt my feelings, you know, but it scarred me up to a degree that now when shit happens, you know, when something that is deservedly yours and you don't get it, hey man, I've been through it enough. So, and then it took a few years. I mean, the prime example, in 2002, I was shooting a movie with Robin Williams up in Canada. And Robin was one of my heroes, like one of my absolute heroes. And we were talking about Holly Hunter's character had Tourette syndrome. We're talking about Tourette's and symptoms and whatnot, manifestations. And he said, sometimes it's tactile. You know, you have to touch something before you look at it. I said, yeah, I did that in Mary. I didn't trust someone. I'd touch them before I looked. He goes, what? I said, yeah, I did. He goes, something about Mary? I said, yeah, that's you? That's you? I said, yeah. Oh my God, that's all the people. I said, where did they find this guy with this timing? How does this guy have that kind of timing? Oh my God, it's you. I said,
wow.
Yeah. So then Warren became one of his characters. Like 90% of the time Robin was on. I don't know if you ever had a chance to work with him.
No.
But every now and again, the mask would drop and there would be just such a raw, you know, soul there. But 90% of the time he's on. Like we would cut, and then he would go into a character. Well, Warren became one of his characters for weeks.
Wow.
He would, well, I'm sitting there with that wow look on my face after one take, and he goes, what? When I was in the 7th grade, I had Reality, What a Concept, and I memorized side 1 of the entire album. Wow. I would go to school and steal your jokes. And now watching you kind of take mine, that's pretty fucking cool.
That's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
And also kind of speaks to what I'm talking about is you were almost you almost suffered for playing this role too great because there's this disconnect. The industry was Robin Williams. They couldn't even wrap their head around that this was not the real guy and you were that guy.
when Ben Stiller made Tropic Thunder, I was sent the script. I was with a larger agency at that point. And I told the agent, I went, look, this is Jack Black. I mean, they have a relationship that long predates my relationship with Ben, and this is going to be Jack. He goes, well, no, they don't have a deal. But that whole speech that Robert delivered to Ben, you know, never go full. I emailed Ben. I emailed him and went, well, that explains my fucking career.
Well, it should have been, and unless you can pull off what Earl pulled off. That's incredible, man. And you know, I had to tell you real quick that when I was 16, I snuck out of my house in Houston, Texas, and I went to see Waylon Jennings with his beautiful wife Jessie Coltrane in concert because he was one of my heroes. And Brendan, you just finished up The Boar's Nest, right?
Yeah, man. I love The Boar's Nest. I thought you were a perfect voice cast for Waylon.
Well, thank you.
Really great work getting into like the less glamorous side of his story, I thought.
Well, those guys, I have an art print that hangs in the main house. I'm out in the old garage is my playroom. It's the penultimate 14-year-old boys room. Kiss posters and Farrah posters, you know.
Yeah.
But I have an art print of the Highwaymen. And those were, you know, I've gotten to work with Chris quite a bit. We became friends. And I know Willie. I hosted the Waylon tribute in 15 down at ACL. And I know Shooter really well, you know, Waylon's son. But those are my heroes.
Me too, man.
You know, I saw them in concert when I was a kid. I saw Johnny Cash with my mom when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're like, and hanging with Chris, getting those stories. I became friends with Cowboy Jack Clement. So I'd always go over to the Cowboy Arms when I was in Nashville and like sit like this is ground zero of, you know, that was my Paris at midnight. You know, that was my ideal of here's all these incredibly brilliant artists who all happen to be hillbillies, but this was the sun around which every one of those planets revolved. Townes Van Zandt, you know, John. And so, yeah. And now, you know, we're it's a mark of our age. You know, our heroes are fading away and gone away. But it was such a treat to do because I never knew Sue. You know, speaking of Boar's Nest, but I knew those stories. And it was Dub Cornett because the director was brought in. She's a theater director and she's out of Chicago. I was the only person in the cast who like really intimately knew, you know, and actually knew some of the people that are portrayed in the thing. Yeah. And I don't know, Mick Jagger produced that, so I could say, hey, I've worked for Mick. Right. I've never met Mick, but I can say I worked for him.
Yeah. Well, it was that, I mean, same for me, man. It was just that kind of, that rebel, that rebellious spirit that really the highwaymen. I mean, they were my first rock stars, and they were, I think, our first poets, you know, particularly with Matheson, you know, he was just the greatest songwriter probably of all time, you know.
I got a really funny Chris story if you want to hear it.
Please.
Okay. We were doing blood work in Wilmington, and I'd worked with him once before. I did, Ray Wiley Hubbard wrote it. It's called The Last Rites of Ransom Pride. It ends up, the final product is so-so, but anyway, Chris and I are, a few years later, we're in Wilmington, our apartments are next to each other. We started hanging out. Well, the kid, Reese Thompson, was playing his grandson, and Reese didn't know who Christopherson was until we started the movie. Well, then he realized, oh my God, like this guy he's a Golden Gloves boxer, a Rhodes Scholar, taught at West Point, a war hero in Vietnam. And just so he idolizes Chris. So one night we have a dinner reservation. We're sitting in my apartment. Reese had just turned 21 when we're doing the movie. He's sitting in the big reading chair with a joint in his hand, and I was watching television today in the Discovery Channel. There was a documentary about how the forests are really the Earth's lungs, and deforestation. Chris is standing in the middle of the room. He reaches over, he takes the joint out of his hands, and he turns to me and he goes, "That young man has had enough." And as he says it, he takes a hit. And when he does, he goes, "I spent the day reading Blake. The path of excess leads to the palace of wisdom." Woo, fuck me, I've had enough.
Wow, man.
This moment of busting the kid's balls for pontificating, and then 30 seconds later, he catches himself doing the exact same thing.
I love that, man. I love that. I love it. A lot of those guys, Ray Wiley, and then David Allan Coe. I saw him a couple years back. They just kind of help him up on stage, man. And he's still kind of got it, man. You know,
he's a difficult personality.
Oh, David. Right. Yeah.
No, Ray is everything you would imagine. You know, you would want your greasy, gritty, hillbilly poet hero picker to be. That's what Ray Wiley Hubbard is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
his health, he's still able to get up there on the stage and do it himself. You know, I know David's had health problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, David he's every time I've ever been around him, he's cantankerous as hell.
Yeah. 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 He's tired. He's probably just tired. You know,
Wouldn't we all be?
yeah. I'm wondering how you had the bravery and the wherewithal. You know, when I first moved out to Los Angeles and in the year 2000, coming from Texas, I kept, and I got into acting class and I kept thinking, God damn, I gotta hide this accent. You know, I thought that it was something I had to hide. And then later on, many years later, I realized, no, this is something I should have been embracing. You know what I mean? I guess you just had such a strong sense of self. You're just like, fuck it, this is who I am. Or did you know kind of younger, no, I got to embrace who I am. And that's what's going to make me me.
When I went to school, when I started there, because it was a conservatory, I was worried about all the dance stuff we had to do. You know, the physical stuff. I played sports, but ballet dancing? Are you fucking kidding me? Look at me. Well, but ironically, I had the most problem with speech class because I didn't hear it. You know, I didn't hear the diphthong changes. Well, then when I realized, like, holy shit, I really sound Southern. I started working. I mean, I camouflage it when I'm in a role that it's not appropriate for. I camouflage it with a Midwestern. You know, I put on a little bit of that Chicago, just a little bit, so that it hides. You know, but my normal speaking voice. You know, we joke that the more beer I have or the longer my phone call is with Mama, the more Southern I get.
Right.
But yeah, so I it all came together for me in View from the Bridge at Steppenwolf, because that was a transcendent show. And all of the acting exercises and shit that I did in school that just seemed to make no sense to me whatsoever. Why are we wasting our time with this shit? When that show happened, all of it, all the pieces fit together.
Right.
Before that, I could see a phenomenal performance. I could see Laurie Metcalf on stage, who's absolutely transcendent on stage. And like, oh my God, but I didn't know exactly how to get there myself. Every now and then I could feel it, you know, maybe kind of getting there. I'd had an experience in college with that championship season, which solidified, like, I'm doing this forever, because it was that transcendent feeling. Well, then View from the Bridge happened 5 years later, 6 years later. Well, I was in a place where I understood it, you know, and craft wise, where you can create something that transcends craft into the area of art. So since then, that's when all the pieces fit for me. And I became comfortable with myself because it unleashed all this, you know, it's not that my mind had blocked out memories of trauma in my life, in my family, because Mama's family come from a history of alcoholism and dysfunction is the popular terminology. But I understood it because it opened up a gateway to something that happened when I was a kid, you know, this trauma that I had that was never spoken of in my family again. And every time, once I realized where this came from, because I almost had a breakdown's the wrong word. I did have an emotional breakdown for about 30 minutes when these memories came back in my mind. Holy shit, I'm recreating what happened between my grandfather and my uncle. Every time I performed on stage after that, for the run of that show, it felt like my soul had been taken out of my body and washed. So there's that, you know, when we talk about this, because I listened to a couple of the earlier podcasts. I listened to you on, what's it called? In the Room. After podcast. There's two elements, and I thought of this before we started our conversation. There's two elements things we can discuss. We can discuss the craft, you know, we can discuss the business part of it. And I believe everything that we do is, especially within our careers, within our craft, but it also goes to within our daily lives. Every choice that we make serves either our soul or our ego. It is either based in love or it is based in fear. And ego can strangle. Look at Elvis Presley in 1956. Absolutely transcendent talent. I mean, there's a connection to the spirit there that's just overwhelming. And then you look at Elvis Presley in 1977, whose, you know, ego destroyed what talent he had, and it destroyed him. I've seen that happen with actors, you know, people that I knew. And I've seen people trying to live a life with at that degree of crazy ass fame can really choke your talent. So I've always been aware of, I never ever want to lose that psychological emotional connection that A View from the Bridge gave me in 1992 that allowed some sort of healing of myself. I never want to lose that. You know, the flip to it is I got a mortgage to pay. I got, you know, so I had to do shit that I didn't want to do because I needed the money. And you know, they want to hire you to do the stuff they've already seen you do.
Right. 100%.
And I don't, that bores me. I've taken jobs like that. I'm lucky that my wife, when my daughter was born, she didn't want to work full time. And she took freelance gigs. Well, Anna was in college, and through all of her volunteer work, my wife I have a skill my wife lacks. I have a skill to sit on my ass for days on end and accomplish nothing and be absolutely fine with it. But not her. She volunteered. Through all of her volunteer work, she got recruited by Disney. She's a vice president at Disney now. She's in charge of internal comms for the company.
Okay.
Well, the moral of that story is I have the blessing of being an elbow ornament. If I don't want to do a gig now, I don't have to. You know? Right. Well, she's been there 5 years now, 5.5 years. Prior to that, man, I don't want to do this. This is really crap, but I need the money. So I'm very blessed that that my life's at the place it is. So.
I mean, I imagine there's a certain degree of just freedom and being able to be discernible, you know? But you don't have if you've got your mortgage payment coming up and there's no fucking money in the bank. No. You know? And God forbid you do something and then you know that you're selling your soul, and then you do it and the money runs out, but there's still that period of time when people are like, you're a little bit like your choices are in question. You know?
Well, I remember I think I told you the story when we worked together on Longmire. Did I tell you the story about auditioning for?
We never worked together on Longmire. I swear we didn't.
Didn't I kill you?
Nope.
In the pickup?
Nope. You're like, God damn it.
Didn't you play the truck driver who was stealing the cattle?
Nope. I'm dying to know who you're thinking about.
Really look that up.
God damn it.
I should have just let you tell the story. But
no, I was thinking that was you. No, you didn't do Longmire.
Nope.
God damn.
We worked a lot.
I'm sorry.
No, we worked on a lot of the similar stuff. Or we worked on a lot of the same stuff, but kind of missed each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. What if you were just like, well, God damn it, who are you? I'm out of here, bud.
No. I know who you are. I know who you are because of True Blood.
Yeah.
We were there. I was brought in to audition for that, and this was after Deadwood. And I walk in the room, and I'm fuck it, and it's like all of these 20-year-old really pretty guys.
Yeah.
And James LeGros was there, and LeGros had grown the beard. You know, he'd gotten grizzled over the years. And LeGros leans over to me and he goes, "What the fuck are me and you doing here?"
Yeah, man.
And then Jason Momoa walked into the room, and it was literally Game of Thrones had not come out. No one knew who he was, but Jason walks in the room. I literally laughed out loud, like, "What the fuck?"
Right. I know. Talking about not knowing what you want, right?
Yeah. This kind of grizzled, you know, and then it was you. Like, thank God they hired somebody that fits, that works.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's funny because, well, hold on. I want to back up real quick, and I know we don't have a lot of time with you, but I'm curious to know. I have to ask you real quick about Deadwood, because you're obviously so fantastic in it. But it was a show that kind of broke the mold. Yeah. But when you're and I know that you ended up writing for it. You're on it for, but auditioning for it, right? Because you had never had context for a show that existed like this, right? I mean,
no, there hadn't been anything that existed like that.
So was that audition a little bit of a woolly booger?
Well, it was Judy and Libby who had cast. I did 6 Feet Under, and a lot of us that were on Deadwood had done 6 Feet Under, so I'd guest start on that. And that was a never-ending audition process. I went back 4 times, and there were like stars, like known people that were auditioning for that role. And then it ended up being a great situation. So I'm in the room. I was doing in Nashville. I committed to doing Steve Earle's play. Steve had written his first play. He was my hero. When I was in acting school, WXRT in Chicago would play Steve Earle, and the hair on the back of my neck would stand up. First time I heard Copperhead Road blew my mind.
Wow.
So I'm this rabid Steve Earle fan. I met him at LAX. We became buddies. So he wrote this role for me, and I'm doing his play in Nashville. I committed to it a year prior. So Deadwood rolls around, and I went to audition right before I left to Nashville to start rehearsals. And they sent me Doherty. Well, Doherty on the page, there was only a couple of lines. And I said, this is the thug in the shadows. I don't want to be the thug in the shadows for 7 years. This is thankless. So I thought, well, Jack McCall, only 4 episodes, but it's showy. I want to read that. So I go in, and Libby comes out. She goes, you got Doherty, right? I said, yeah, but I want to read McCall. What? I said, I want to read from McCall. Okay, all right, let's read both. We'll read McCall, then we'll read Doherty. Yeah, okay. So we go in. So I read Jack McCall, and it's David Milch and Walter Hill. And they kind of look at each other, and Milch looks at her. She goes, oh, we've got Doherty too. We got Doherty. So we do Doherty. Again, there's 3 lines. And so we do it, and David moves forward on the couch. He goes, all right, we're going to do this again. Now I want you to think about this. And he starts parsing the language. Now, the reason that there's a comma here is because there's a thought that crosses your mind that goes back to, and I realized, like, oh my God, this guy doesn't write thugs in shadows. There's, every syllable. Right. I had guest starred on NYPD Blue before, so I knew how he was about, the language. But every syllable is thought through with him. Every sound, every inflection.
Right.
So we do it. Well, then I was offered the pilot, and I was in Nashville, and we had performances of the play. And Steve had a residential studio at the time, and he was there hanging out with me. And I got the phone call that you have to work on Halloween, October 31st of 2002, because if you can't, it's the drop dead. They cannot arrange the schedule to fit you otherwise. So he hears it through my flip phone. I hang up, and I go, man, I said, look, I promised you a year ago I'd do this play. I'm doing this play. I'm not dropping out of this play. He goes, yeah, man, but I'm going to feel like shit if I cost you a TV show. And so we canceled 1 performance of the play, and I flew in. He picked me up at the airport and drove me to the theater. I got out of the car, changed into my wardrobe, and 5 minutes later walked on stage.
Wow, man. Wow.
So it all worked out, and he became a rabid fan of the show.
Yeah.
So
how could he not be? I remember I did a guest star on Justified, and I was like the young, cocksure guy, a bank robber who came in, and I ended up like accosting Natalie Zia and Timothy Oliphant's, pretty angry at me. But he comes into the bank all calm and collective, and we're doing the rehearsal, and I forget who's directing, but you would know him. And I do the big bank robber thing, and all right, listen up, and I'm like, and I'm doing this thing like with like twirling my thing on the gun, and Oliphant's like, stop. Let's just stop. He goes, make no mistake about it. He's like, the very second you twirled your finger on the handle of that gun, I would have already dropped you. So he made this whole like performative thing I was doing, and he kind of helped whittle it down into this one little contained little thing between me and him, and be very careful. And I learned a lot. I learned a great deal from him. Those couple weeks on that show.
that's the difficulty when we run. We get so few opportunities to do your thing,
right?
And you want to make the most of your thing.
Yeah.
And you find I watch a lot of old television shows here, and I see the guest stars chewing every piece of scenery, trying to get every moment, and it takes you out of the scene. That's the difficulty is to find that stillness. And when you're the FNG on the set, then it's more you want to make the most of every moment, but when you do, you're kind of poisoning it for yourself.
It's tricky.
To be still and be in the moment. Yeah, it is.
It's tricky because it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because I was actually talking about this yesterday with my brother. Like, not Christopher Lloyd, but Christopher, who's the guy who played the dad in Back to the Future? Really eccentric actor.
Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover. Now, he comes in here and he's like, oh, Lorraine, I guess I'm just not good at confrontation. He's just fucking wackadoodle. And I know that it was a point of contention where some of the other actors were like, God damn, okay, so he's really going for it. Now, clearly Zemeckis, you know what I mean, was like, no, this guy's brilliant. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he had the wherewithal, like, no, I am committing to this thing. Now, we look back and Back to the Future, and that's, I think, a brilliant performance. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know, but if it works, it works, I guess is the point. And sometimes it's not easy to determine whether or not it works, in the moment, time will tell.
That's where the director comes into play. Mm-hmm. I mean, the director's got to know how the rhythms of the scene need to flow so that they fit with the other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And so that's where you need that the trust exercise of falling off the ladder, hoping, the director is going to catch you. You do need, you need to have those things in your arsenal if they are required, if they're needed.
Right.
I found that as long as every moment is alive, I mean, we're talking about the craft part of this. If you're absolutely in the moment and you believe in the moment, you can get away with some outlandish, crazy things. Pieces of business will fit. But the moment that those pieces of business or that fake nose or any other external thing becomes the focus of the scene, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because then the truth of the scene is missing. The metaphor I love to use is we are digging for nuggets of truth in imaginary soil.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what it is. But again, you've got to have belief in the moment, and the moment's got to be alive.
Yeah, and invariably, whenever you, forgive the cliche, but whenever you let that impulse in, that's like, oh, where did that come from? 99 out of 100 times, you're like, oh, that's the best part of that scene because it was just born of the moment,
Yeah.
And you hope for those accidents, and you talk to a guy like Chris Bauer, he's like, man, if that's not just what I'm like, if I'm not getting like 9 of those in a scene, I'm like, damn, I'm hoping for one of those in a scene.
Yeah.
But
that's the great thing, and I tell young actors that never, ever fall out of the moment when you're on camera. If something happens, a mistake happens, you sneeze, and any sort of thing like that. Funny story. I'm friends with Jason Isbell. And I've known Jason since he started with the Truckers, when I met all those guys way back when.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was doing Killers of the Flower Moon, he texted me, he goes, dude, I'm doing a movie. And he had come out Deadwood. He's in the background on the Deadwood movie because he was a Deadwood fanatic. So he's doing Killer Moon. Well, he was on an interview promoting the thing. And he talks about doing that two-hander with him and Leo. And he said, yeah, in the middle of a scene, somebody passed gas on the set. He's talking about that moment.
Yeah.
I emailed him. I said, Miles Davis, music exists only in the moment it is created, and only in that moment is music alive. A recording is nothing but a souvenir of a moment that has passed. Also, Miles Davis, there are no wrong notes. It's the note you play afterwards that defines whether it was good or bad. And I said, Ulysses. Wow. And the same thing goes for someone farting on camera. It's the note you play afterward.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, man. That's brilliant.
It's I mean, it's those moments of where life is it's actually in the moment. Well, an editor, the director can take that little piece and use it somewhere,
Yeah, especially a good one, a skilled one,
Yeah. Not that I'm advocating for farting in every scene. That's but if it happens, go with it, baby.
It's funny. I got a similar text, from Randy Hauser when he was on set of Killers of the Flower Moon, saying, "Holy shit! I'm out here working on Killers of the Flower Moon." I want to let you go, but I just got a couple quick things for you. I want to know, is there anyone you're dying to play? Like you got a script in your back pocket, or do you?
Yeah. Dying to play. No, I mean, I did a short film with Jerry Cantrell called Dad Band. It's on YouTube, and we got 1.5 million views. It's funny as hell. It's 11 minutes long. I would love to do an expanded version of that. And I had a 10-episode arc of this band. The short film is about the formation and dissolution of a suburban dad band in the course of a single afternoon. Right. And it's basically the opening 11 minutes of a big full story I want to tell. So that, I wrote a horror movie that that's at the front burner. I didn't write a role for myself in it. I don't necessarily want to be in it. Right. But if I could have my druthers of doing anything right now, it's that. I have a young director out of New Orleans that I want to do it. He wants to do it, and we're trying to raise the money for it. So.
Okay, well, good. Well, I hope that comes to fruition. Finally, I want to. I got to tell you that no one has taken more of the roles that I've auditioned for than you. And invariably, when I see what you've done with it, I think to myself, "God damn, I would have hired him too." Which leads me to this.
I have those moments too. There are roles where so I'm sorry I cut you off.
No. I want to talk. I don't know how much you can talk about working for Vigo on this next film, The Dead Don't Hurt. That comes out soon, right?
I think at the end of the month or early June. Yeah, it's soon.
What's it like working for Vigo?
As a director, he is as meticulous as he is as an actor. Wow. With every single moment. I got along great with him because it's not like we were buddies, but I've known him ever since I've been with Lynn. We met. And he's extraordinary. He's one of the best actors that we have. Yeah. So I completely had a great time working with him. A couple of the other actors felt over-directed. They felt, but it's because he sees in his head, because he wrote this too, He knows as a director. That's the difference. I could never direct myself in a film. I don't think. I think I could direct certain kinds of movies. I could direct. I know I'm going to direct plays because I've done it. But I don't know that I could direct myself. Wearing those two hats at the same time, and he was doing that. And with our film, he wasn't supposed to be the lead. I think it's the role that Garrett Dillahunt played that Vigo was going to play, which is a supporting role. Okay. Because he wanted to focus on directing. Well, the actor that he had, the agent at the last minute pulled the guy out. So to keep his money, Vigo had to take over the lead role. I absolutely adored working with him and would do it again in a heartbeat.
Amazing. One more thing. You said this great quote from Ray Wiley Hubbard about gratitude. What was that again?
Yeah, that was good.
Every day that my gratitude is higher than my expectations, I have a good day.
Brilliant.
Where's the lip?
Brilliant.
And you mentioned just as a tag talking about it. I know the ones that I've lost out to, Phil Hoffman, early on in my career, they were supposed to fly me out here to screen test me for this thing. And they said, they found this guy in New York they really love and they're going to hire him. And well, it was Phil, there are those people along the way. So the ones you lost out on, but you don't realize the roles that you've gotten that whoever else lost out on. But
no doubt. But I bring that. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that I bring that up to let what I should have closed that with was it makes me a better actor. It inspires me to always go deeper.
Yeah.
Guys like you. Go ahead.
Well, this was a year after Something About Mary. There was a movie called The Tao of Steve, and they sent it to me to go meet with the director, and I just did not get it. You know, it's about this overweight, slovenly guy who's really successful with women, and his buddies just can't get it. I'm like, how do you? I just didn't. Well, then Donald Logue plays the role.
Right.
And Donald and I met our oldest kids, my only kid, and his oldest, same age, in Gymboree here in Burbank. We'd take our kids to Gymboree at 7 a.m, and we'd have those actor conversations that a decade prior we would have had at 3 a.m. in a bar somewhere,
Right.
But then I saw the Tao of Steve right before I met him. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, oh my God, that guy is so much better than I ever would have been in this role.
Yeah. He got it, right? He got it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely believed it. And I don't think I could have done that. So,
Well, brother, I am so grateful to you. And man, I just look at all your work, and I think even with all the amazing stuff you've done, I think the best is yet to come, and I can't wait to see what else you do, brother.
Thank you. And I apologize about the Longmire thing, because I had two scenes with that actor, and I complimented him on how good he was in True Blood.
Well, that's